Hello, I wanted to give you a quick review on a couple of topics today of listing agreements and laws of agency. If you have my quiz questions, whip that out if you're from my class. If not, I'm going to put a link below. You could download these questions if they might be of help, but I'll read them. Number one, according to the law of agency in the California Civil Code, a buyer's agent fiduciary duty is best described as. Now remember, when you represent a client as a buyer or a seller or both, right, dual agency, it creates a certain responsibility on the agent's part, which we call a fiduciary duty. What this question's asking is, which of the following best describes that fiduciary duty the best? And the correct answer is acting with utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty in dealing with the buyer. So how do we define an agent's fiduciary duty? As acting with utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty in dealings with the client. Number two, an enforceable listing agreement. Remember when we talk about listing agreements, and who are the two parties in a listing agreement? The broker and the seller. Who are the two parties in a listing agreement? The broker and the seller, which we refer to as the principal, so keep that in mind. But this question is asking, an enforceable listing agreement for the sale of real property must be, and the answer is in writing. Of these four choices, in writing. Number three, showing a buyer properties in a specific area because of their race, so you're intentionally showing them a certain area because they're Latino or whatever it is called steering. Steering, and that's illegal. So you need to know that showing a buyer properties in a specific area purely because of their race is steering. A lender who refuses to lend in certain geographic areas due to the makeup of the residents there is guilty of redlining, because they used to actually grab a marker and redline an area and say don't lend there. So I want you to connect redlining with discrimination by lenders. Okay, now listen to this one. Okay, if you have your sheet, whip it out and read it. Broker Smith signed an exclusive agency listing to sell Brown's $500,000 house. Smith worked hard and advertised a home for sale. Okay, he's a good agent. He was working hard trying to sell it. Brown ended up selling the home to a buyer he had found. Smith is most likely to receive what? So they're asking, will Smith get a commission? This is where we have to understand the four listing agreement types for the state exam. So the first one I want you to be comfortable with is an exclusive right to sell. That's where the seller hires the broker, and the broker is going to get paid if they find the buyer, or if another broker from another office brings the buyer, or if the seller finds the buyer, it still has to go through the broker in an exclusive right to sell. However, in this question, they're saying Broker Smith signed an exclusive agency. There's a slight difference here. That means if the broker finds the buyer, he'll get paid. Another broker brings a buyer, he gets paid. However, if the seller finds the buyer, he doesn't owe the broker any commission. So in an exclusive agency, we might say that the seller reserves the right to find their own buyer and not pay the broker. So number one, don't sign that type of listing agreement. But for the state exam, know that in this question, since Broker Smith signed an exclusive agency, and then Mr. Brown sold the house to a neighbor, meaning didn't go through the broker, he didn't owe him any money. So the correct answer would be that no commission would be due to Broker Smith. Okay, number six, to be entitled to a commission, a broker must show that he or she was the procuring cause. Remember, procuring cause has a very legal definition to it, that we might describe it as the exact reason for the sale or the most immediate reason for the sale. So in all the types of listing agreements, which one does the broker not have to be the immediate reason for the sale? Well, we go back to exclusive right to sell, because the seller might have found a buyer and he would still have to go through the broker, or the broker number two might have found. So we might say that in an exclusive right to sell, the listing broker does not have to be the procuring cause, Okay, number seven, if you have your sheet, A private seller advertises a single-family home for sale by owner. He also states that the sale will be as is. Okay, very common, a seller will advertise a property as is. Now, the question is, does he still have to disclose what's wrong with it? And this is a very common issue, even though it's already been decided in the courts. In fact, the big lawsuit in our business was in 1984 between Easton versus Strasburger, where Easton sued the seller Strasburger for not disclosing that the property was on a hill that had all sorts of foundation issues. If you remember in that case, Strasburger's defense was, I told you it was as is. So what the court had to decide was, well, because the seller says it's as is, does that remove the duty to disclose? And what the California appellate court decided, because this went to appeal, was that no, as is does not relieve the seller from the obligation to disclose what's wrong with the house. So, a private seller advertises a single-family home for sale by owner. He also states that the sale will be as is. As far as disclosures, the seller must give buyer a real estate transfer disclosure statement and identify any material issues with the home that he's aware of. Okay, number 8. Broker Jones took a net listing. With this type of agreement, even if Broker Jones is the procuring cause, he may still not receive any commission. Why is that? Because a net listing says I need to net a certain amount. So if your offer does not come to that minimum that the seller wants, then your commission might be 0. So a net listing, don't sign this one either, but in fact it's legal in California but discouraged. A net listing is one where the seller says, as long as I net this much, anything above is your commission. So it could backfire on you both ways. Number one, the offer may come in at the minimum or less, and now you're not going to get anything. Or worse, it comes in higher, and now your seller thinks you violated your fiduciary duty by not advising them that the house was worth more. So don't do the net listing for the state exam. I want you to understand it. So number 8, Broker Jones took a net listing. With this type of agreement, Broker Jones is the procuring cause, but he still may not receive any commission if the offer was not enough to cover the minimum for the seller. Number 9, a seller signed an open listing with several brokers. So several brokers came over, the seller said, well, I'll pay whoever brings me a buyer, and he signs an open listing. Well, unfortunately, with that one, the only one who's going to get paid is the broker that's the immediate procuring cause. So what I want you to know about an open listing is that the only way the broker's going to get paid in that one is if they were the procuring cause. And it's perfectly fine for a seller to do this, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to convince them that an exclusive right to sell might be in both your best interest, Number 10, an exclusive right to sell, so back to this one, an exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency as well, must be what? It must be in writing to be enforceable. That's like that other question we talked about. But it also must have a definitive termination date. What do we mean by that? It can't be forever. It needs to have a beginning and an end. So start and finish. So you say this exclusive right to sell or exclusive agency is for this period of time. So in order to be enforceable, it needs to be in writing, and it needs to have a definitive termination date when it comes to an exclusive right to sell or an exclusive agency. An advertisement by a licensee for a real estate listing must contain, okay, this is more of an agency law question. So if you advertise a property for sale and you're a licensee, it must have the name of your employing broker, And number 12, this one's interesting because a lot of new agents ask me this. A broker receiving a referral from an out-of-state broker. So your buddy in Arizona sends you a client for Los Angeles if you happen to be in LA. Can you pay your buddy who's licensed in Arizona a referral fee? And the answer is yes, without it being considered a kickback or giving him compensation for doing real estate in California when he doesn't have a license. This is a little bit of an exception. It's perfectly fine if they're licensed in another state, for you to pay a referral fee if they give you a referral, and vice versa. It'd be okay for you to pay a referral fee to, or for you to receive a referral fee for referring a client. Maybe your client decides to move to Texas, you refer them to an agent in Texas, and he pays your referral fee. So a broker receiving a referral fee from an out-of-state broker may, so a broker receiving a referral fee from an out-of-state broker may pay a referral fee if that broker is not licensed in the state. Okay, so let's review real quick. Exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Broker's gonna get paid no matter what. Procuring costs, as long as there's a definitive determination date in writing. Exclusive agency. The seller's kind of in competition with the broker, right? The last thing you want to get is that phone call like, hey, don't worry about Sunday. Why Sunday open house canceled? Because I sold it to the neighbor. Open listing, that's like date anybody you want, right? That doesn't work. So they have an agreement with tons of brokers. And the only way you're gonna get paid is if you're the one who directly brings the buyer. And then we have this net listing that could get very murky, right? If the offer's not enough to cover the minimum, or the offer's way higher than the minimum, they may get a little suspect of your pricing strategy. So make sure you understand those four, and good luck on the state exam.